Hello again, my lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. I might have mentioned that there might not be any recordings for the coming week or two, but let's just say I found some motivation and some extra time on the side so that we can record at least one more chapter before my coming UK trip. Please heed the trigger warnings, which will be graphic depictions of violence and some mature language. If that is too much for you, please click off and maybe consider listening to one of the more family-friendly podfics I have recorded. With that said, grab yourself something to drink, grab yourself some snacks, sit back and relax as we head into the video. Locked in Digital, written by RogueDruid, Icarius 51, read by Tilir. Chapter 8. Putting on a Clinic. Time, night 1, 2:02 a.m. Power level, 68%. Izuku blinked, rubbing away the strain of his eyes as he tapped through the screens quickly. So far he had been careful to conserve power, going so far as to manually check both halls and spent plenty of time simply listening for any auditory cues. However, he was slowly growing nervous. The sound and echoes of the animatronics moving was constantly putting him on edge, and the faint glimpses of them on the screen only made it worse. He glanced at the clock. Time, 2:05 a.m. Power, 67%. Ida and Tokoyami glanced down the street. The still smoking and ice-covered remains of the original test building were clearly visible, while before them was another basic building. As the two heroes in training stretched and readied, they began to talk. I possess engine-augmented legs, allowing me to accelerate quite fast. Yourself? I carry my darker half. His ethereal form quite dangerous. Darkness increases the depth of my power. From under the hem of Tokoyami's cloak, a shadowy black bird peeked out, its shining yellow eyes peering up at Ida. The taller teen took a second to process before nodding awkwardly. Well, shall we plan on how to engage our enemies? If you possess speed, then perhaps you should lead while I provide rear cover as we clear. I suppose that is the best way to proceed. The two fell back into an awkward silence as they waited for the 5 minutes to end. Izuku glanced around the room, the bomb having been moved by the efforts of the two teens. Turning, he signed to his comrade. You okay, guarding? Yes. Of course. Izuku looked back once as he left the room, Koda already leaning out of the window as a small flock of birds began to gather on the far side of the building from the heroes team's entrance. Stepping through the door, he thought back to the note that he had received from Hatsume. I've got the guns and the main armor finished up, but the new sword, your special weapon, and your cutter are giving me trouble. Mask's done, though. Left-hand pocket under the arm. Armor claw. Good luck. Test them well. Mouth twitching slightly in amusement at the memory, he slid his hand under the half-skirt at his side, pulling forth a thick, curved mouthguard-looking hunk of metal. He brought it up, and with a small whirring click it attached to the metal gorget that covered his neck. As it covered his jaw, he breathed deep and pressed 2 buttons to activate it. Whirs and clicks echoed as plates shifted and realigned, coming out to wrap around his jaw and face. Thin, flexible plates reaching up till they aligned over his cheekbones and nose, forming a smooth, curved grill with a design almost like barred teeth, his breath coming out as a faint hiss when he exhaled. As the guard finished, he closed his eyes, feeling 2 squared pieces shifting to cover his sockets as a third, wider plate wrapped from temple to temple over. The second and then faint beep, and the darkness that covered his eyes was replaced by a faint blue light. He opened his eyes to see the world around him washed in a blue hue. The darkest corners of the building now lit clearly to his eyes. Tapping the side of the visor, the blue faded away as he turned off the UV of the helmet, leaving him with the world looking slightly washed out instead. He tapped the earpiece he wore and checked it, hearing the channel open in his ears.
"Hunter, come check."
His voice, normally fairly monotone, sounded mechanical and threatening to his own ears. The muffling of his face mask more than enough to remove the last traces of intonation. That could be annoying in the field. He'd have to check with Hatsume about it later. "Watcher, come to check." Koda's fairly high-pitched voice echoed across the communicators clearly.
"Good. Let me know when you're ready."
"Yes." Izuku nodded and shifted his shotgun from his back to his hands, reflexively checking the chamber to see the vibrant purple case of paint shells he was handed out. Checking with Hatsume via text, she had confirmed they were solid shells that would splatter on impact and not when leaving the barrel. So he had quite a bit of range for a shotgun. Clicking the slide back, the chamber closed and Izuku slung it back across his shoulders. If he was correct, he had just under 2 minutes left until the conflict truly began. Reaching in his pockets, he unhooked and pulled out a braided paracord bundle. Black, thin cord strong enough to support his weight if necessary. Nodding, he also reached in and pulled a small box of loop-headed pythons from another pocket. 200 feet of paracord and 5 floors to cover. Better get going. Stepping forward, he got to work. Time 4:42 a.m. Power level 19%. Izuku growled as he heard the repeated clanging of the metal on metal from behind the dropped door. "Go away, you stupid fucking bird!" He looked back out the other door, fingers rapping on the door frame as he glanced around, tensed and ready for another assault. With a final echoing clank of metal on metal, the hammering stopped. Turning back, Izuku frowned and breathed deep and slow, trying to calm himself. Running. Fuck! He could see it, a split second of red fur and metal, far more rugged than the others, as that fucking fox ran at him down the hallway. Ducking back inside the room, Izuku slapped the button to drop the door, grimacing as he considered the cost of the power he was about to use. Just in time for the slam of metal on metal as the fox shoulder-checked the door. He darted to the other door and slammed the light. Just for a second, the form of Chica, the goddamn chicken robot, outlined in the light before he turned it off. Fuck. He rested his head against the metal of the door, trying to let the cool steel help with the burning that he could feel in his eyes. Almost 5 hours down. Just one more. Bakugo glared at the camera screens showing the feed from the building, feeling the strange itch and flex of his muscle as he clenched and unclenched his fists. Deku was more than smart. He was dangerous. Bakugo knew it, and it wasn't on display here. The green-haired teen was cutting between feeds fast and loose, darting from location to location with sure and swift movement, leaving behind coils and half-hidden loops of lines of paracord, before he turned and bolted up the stairs to the top floor as Bakugo's mental timer hit 10 seconds. At 0, the armored teen was opening a window on the top floor, the shotgun no longer across his back, but braced by his shoulder as he took aim.
"The villain's prep time is over! Heroes, you..."
All Might's announcement was cut off by 2 quick bombs, gunfire muted by the walls but still clearly audible over the system. Following that was a deep mechanical growl of the teen over the comms.
2.
Time 4:37 a.m. Power level 5%. Izuku glanced up, eyes stinging as he put the computer to sleep once more. 23 minutes and 5%. He looked around and stood, heading to the doors to manually check them once more. He was tired in a way that Slender had never pushed him to. His eyes burning from stress, his hearing was fading in and out as he tried to focus, straining to hear any footsteps or clunking gears approaching. He glanced out the right door, leaning heavily on the frame as he looked down the long hallway. Stepping back, he turned and heard it. A single click. Too close, too close, too close, too close! He lunged across the security room, smacking the button to shut the door, even as the purple enameled frame of Freddy fucking Fazbear latched on the corner. The door slammed shut, but Izuku could feel it, a creeping sense of dread 1,000 times worse than seeing something like his phone almost dead. As if to punctuate the dread, thudding of metal knuckles on the door began, a morbid, slow heartbeat that was awaiting for him. 5% left. A door uses 1% of power every 4 minutes. 2 doors is half the time for each percent, which means it uses 1% every 2 minutes. I lose 1 every 6 to 7 minutes to minor drain. If I was only dealing with the minor drain, it would give me 30 minutes. With the drain of one of the door, that'll be 12. If they come for the other door, it'll be even faster. Shit! Izuku mumbled and paced to the other door, checking if it was clear for just a second as he kept muttering. His mind was running the math, but it was all coming up short. It didn't matter what he did or even how much he compared the numbers. It just wasn't enough. I need 10 minutes that I don't have. It was only emphasized as Freddy slammed the door again. Ida flinched as the wall next to his head seemed to burst, bright purple goo splattering at his side even as another slammed into the wall just next to Tokoyami, purple paint splattering across the dark feathers and the shoulder of his cloak. Down! Ida dove behind a dumpster nearby, and Tokoyami darted across the ground to another piece of cover, a pile of crates that rested against the wall. It was only then, as Ida glanced back, that his adrenaline froze in his vein. There, next to where he and Tokoyami stood, were 2 rounds, perfectly spaced to emulate where their heads had been. Reaching up to the left of his helmet, he pulled the gloved fingers away to reveal they were dripping purple. He
could have killed us in the first second of the fight.
Ida turned to see the open window overlooking the courtyard.
That was our folly. We were really so ignorant as to not take cover from the windows.
Tokoyami's voice came over the comms, whispering softly.
Yes, I suppose we have to move in. Keep to cover. Of course, you as well.
Izuku watched from the window next to the one he had shot from as the two heroes cautiously darted from cover to cover. He scowled as the thought that they considered that protection. If he was using an actual gun, only a few pieces of cover would keep them safe. He glared at the shotgun chamber for a second before stashing it across his back again.
Note: new issue with paint rounds. No penetrative power.
Pushing off from the window, he headed to the west side of the building while the hero slowly advanced from the north and opened another window. The 15 meters of cord coiled next to it, nailed securely to the wall by three black pythons. Swinging the window open silently with a slow, careful gesture, he tossed the rope out of it and turned back to the stairwell. He took the steps 2 at a time, footsteps quick and yet nearly silent as he moved down to the second floor. Standing there silently, he listened. He could hear the heavy footsteps of Ida as he walked to the door, and Tokoyami was audible by the sound of heavy cloth rasping over stone as he crouched next to the armored teen. Grinning, Izuku flicked the safety of the handgun off. Ida and Tokoyami breathed a sigh of relief as they reached the door. Raising his hands, Ida began to count down to breach. 3, 2... Glass shattered above him, and Ida looked up with eyes widening behind his helmet as time seemed to slow. A mask reaching up to lanky green curls that looked at him, an empty blue glowing visor stretching across and concealing his eyes as the rest of his face was covered by a frankly terrifying metal mask, pieces flowing to form a snarling face of metal. The masked and seemingly merciless form of Midoriya Izuku looked down, one hand holding the window frame as the other leveled a handgun at them. 2 shots rang out, more paint rounds, these red, smashing into the wall just next to where their heads once more. In the moment of shock and silence, there was a chuckle that sounded all the more threatening just by the lack of emotion it contained.
4.
A shift of weight, Midoriya vanished back inside. Behind the still stunned Ida, Tokoyami spoke up, his form shifting as Dark Shadow expressed himself in full, the dark projection wreathing up and around the back of the raven-faced teen.
I do believe we are facing a far more terrifying villain than we expected.
And with that, Ida was filled with a forceful drive to prove himself, to show his opponent that he was not to be toyed with.
We cannot let him keep the momentum.
Thrusters firing, Ida kicked the door in, opening up into the central hall of the floor, the stairway in plain sight. Ida took only 3 steps, Tokoyami darting in to cover them as they entered the building. They had barely taken in the area when Midoriya dropped into view from the stairwell, hanging upside down with his feet braced on the underside of the railing, a floor above them. His left hand was clutching tightly onto a loop of black cord tied above him, as the right came up, or down in the case may be, training the gun on the 2 heroes. However, even as Ida was moving to dodge, Dark Shadow darted forth and curled around the heroes, solidifying to take the attacks with a screech of pride and anger. 2 red splatters of paint covered the black before dripping to the floor.
Finally, you fight back.
With that parting comment, Midoriya seemed to vanish from view once more, pulling himself back up the stairwell with a low chuckle that echoed, amplified by his mask.
Good. I was worried this would be boring.
And with that, the lights of the building went dark. Koda glanced up and took a deep breath before looking at the window and the various crates surrounding the room. Almost 100 birds sat perched on edges and windowsills. Sparrows, pigeons, swallows, crows, and even 2 kite hawks. With another deep breath, he called out, "Get going, please?" With a flurry of wings, they leapt and took flight, swirling around Koda in a myriad of feathers before funneling out the window, and then beginning to flutter and circle the building itself. Reaching up, he took a steadying breath and tapped his comms. "Midoriya, you've got your distraction." He glanced up as the lights cut out and nodded. It seems the rats had found the power box. Tokoyami backed up his mental grip on Dark Shadow tight as he focused. The long hallways were dim but not truly dark, mainly because of the light reflecting from the windows and the open doorway into the corridor, as well as faint glow of sunlight shining down the center of the stairwell. Even with that much light, it was dark enough that Dark Shadow had doubled, almost tripled in size.
Rush! We can take them!
No, we've underestimated him twice and lost in all but name each time. Now we be careful.
Time is short. Act or lose.
Growling, Tokoyami begrudgingly agreed.
Ida, we're losing time. You head up and start searching for the bomb. I'll hunt down and keep the Dark Knight occupied. The white-armored teen paused, but nodded, rushing up the stairs and darting through the door into the 2nd floor. Tokoyami had been paying attention, however, and stepped into the dark shaft of the stairwell, glancing down at the faint shadow that was cast across the bottom of the landing, before moving his gaze far above to see the armored and masked form of Midoriya far above him, leaning over the stairwell of the 3rd floor landing.
Come to keep me company as your ally searches for the bomb?
Came the call, metallic tone echoing even the handgun was aimed down, at the bottom of the stairwell. Dark Shadow stretched and twisted.
I shall be your shadowed hero, villain.
Then I shall be your sunlit villain, hero.
With that, Tokoyami lifted his arms and sent the mass of Dark Shadow twisting and clawing up the stairwell, gashes ripping through stone as the possession quirk attacked. Midoriya remained unimpressed.
No control.
And through the shadowy mass, Tokoyami could only stare as deep blue burned to life in the visors of Izuku's masks. Where Izuku looked, Dark Shadow withered, flinching back before it could reach the villain. A ring of steel on leather, and the sword, crude but sharp, struck out, severing the arm of the shadow, making it lose its grip in less than a second. The arm was already regrown, but by then the next action had already been played. Izuku's left hand came down with a flare of sparks and bright red light. He struck the tip of the magnesium flare to life. The glow made Dark Shadow retreat in fear. Even as Midoriya lunged forward into the darkness of the shaft, sword and flare held out to meet the shadow.
5:51 a.m.
Power level 1%. Izuku breathed deep, hands slowly opening and closing as the light flickered above him. The doors were both open, Freddy having left to wander the building, as if it were a joke, as if he was gonna let him live. It was a fucking lie. Izuku stretched slowly, arms and legs limber. If he was going to lose, then he was going to make them work for it. The lights went out, but Izuku was already moving, charging out into the black hallway, eyes already adjusting to the dark. Slender did teach him something, after all. Tokoyami darted away, the shifting and flickering form of dark shadow flowing back and forth with the increasingly weak and pained attempts at countering the force of the enemy. The flare was sending dark shadow flinching back with each sweep and burning thrust, while the sword was harrying the teen himself, long tears appearing in his cloak as the blunted tip caught and pulled across it. Tokoyami's repeated failure to be able to disengage was sending shockwaves of pain across his body from numerous jabs and taps across his arms and spikes.
In a real fight, I would have died by now.
His eyes widened with a realization, and then with the flicker of a force and low sweeping leg, Tokoyami was knocked off his feet, falling back to the ground, his eyes fluttered shut from pain and regret. Two thuds of ringing metal echoed out, and suddenly Tokoyami's cloak was his prison. Two large combat knives had driven halfway through the floor into the concrete, one under each arm and at his sides, driven through his cloak and into the stone to pin him down. Turning and sheathing his sword, Midoriya strode away, his voice ringing out.
A quirk is no excuse to leave a body weak. Train hard, Tokoyami.
As Tokoyami dropped his head back, he stared up at the ceiling in the half-lit hallway. Then he began to chuckle to himself.
For me?
I do believe that we have just been owned.
His laughter deepened, and he tugged at his arms, feeling the restrictions of the cloak binding him tight. Speaking up to so his earpiece could hear.
All Might, I do believe that this is me out of the match. I'll wait here for the fight to end. Of course, young Tokoyami. It shall only be a few minutes longer.
Tenya ducked and weaved around corners, darting across the third floor. Last time he had passed through the stairwell, it was to the sounds of blades and shadows fighting. He glanced around the last room and growled in frustration inside his helmet. The timer he had set was counting down. 6 minutes left. He had turned back to the main corridor, making for the stairs, and paused. Standing against the railing, arms crossed and head tilted, was Midoriya.
One down. You're all that's left.
The bland metallic tone set Tenya's nerve on fire, and the click of the comms only made it worse. As Tokoyami admitted that he was out of the match, Tenya breathed deep and looked at the villain.
So, hero, what's your play?
The flare of exhaust, the growl of an engine, and the humming power surging up his legs, Tenya lunged, and beneath his mask, Izuku's lips curled into a slight smile. Time 5:54 a.m. Power level 0%. Izuku rolled over a table even as Freddy's fist came crashing down over the wooden surface. As he lunged up and away, Bunny came around the next table, Cerberus and springs clicking as it tried to box him in. He kicked the chair next to him up and at the animatronic even as he jumped atop the next table. Foxy was wandering the edge of the dining room, waiting in the wings for an escape attempt. Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie were all trying to box Izuku in, spitting up the circle and close in on him. He leapt from that one table to the next, avoiding Chica's reach as he moved closer and closer to the stage, the animatronics moving in after him.
That's right! Come and get me, you tin-hearted morons!
He was forced back once more, and seeing no recourse, he jumped up and onto the stage, turning in the dark to see the advancing animatronics.
Just a little longer. Come on! Come on!
As Ida darted forward, he didn't see a rope that had been uncoiled and stretched across the hallway. Didn't see that in the darkness, Izuku had prepared a rope, that his hand held capture tape in his grasp. But he felt it. His ankle caught the rope, tripping him up as he crossed the last threshold. He stumbled forward and Izuku stepped to the side, almost gently patting the teen on the back before shoving him over the railings of the stairs. With a crash, Ida cleared the gap in the center of the stairwell. He landed on the far side of the railing, armor cracking as he slammed at high speeds into the wall under the window, glass shattering from the impact. Blinking in a dazed confusion, Ida began to clumsily stagger up, hand on the wall for support. He looked up, eyes unfocused, only to be met with the sight of two birds, large hawks, who were staring at him with gimlet eyes. As his vision focused, Ida's gaze trailed up to see more than just two birds. There were dozens, all of them perched on railings and stairs leading up to the skylight far above. They twitched and shifted and hopped around, wings fluttering, but almost all of them were focused on him. Stepping out from the landing above, Midoriya and his blue-visored mask stared down at him with the flock of birds.
Reckless, you let your temper get the best of you.
Ida staggered as he reached up, pulling off his helmet and gasping for air.
You foul villain!
Above him, a low, echoing, metallic sigh came out, before the mask began to fold away, dropping into a thick metallic jaw piece that Izuku pulled off. You've lost, hero. Tenya staggered and growled out,
I can still fight!
No, you've lost. Check your arm. Ida looked down, and his eyes widened at seeing a loose wrap of capture tape around his wrist.
What? But how?
The birds got you when you blacked out a moment ago and reached up to grab the railing. I'm fairly sure you've got a concussion, and your comm seems to be missing, 'cause All Might just called the match. Ida blinked and reached up, surprised when he realized his comm was indeed missing.
We lost.
Izuku chuckled with the faintest hint of humor in his voice. You did. He strode down the stairs to Ida, the birds scattering to leave the building through the open window in the top floor. Just another gambit unused and unneeded. Good game.
Time 5:59 a.m.
Izuku screamed as his arms were held down. He looked up and cursed as the animatronics held him down on the table. Chica and Foxy held his arms while Bonnie was pinning his legs, one of which was clearly broken. He cursed and twisted, but it only brought more pain. Then, slow, methodical footsteps approached. Freddy was coming, and in his hands was an animatronic. It was shaped like a young girl in a pink dress where the paint wasn't flaking off. Freddy approached, and Izuku could only thrash more as the animatronic girl was set on the table next to him. It hissed and clicked and twisted like a coffin. It began to open up, springs and gears shifting as the outer casing revealed a far too small space, shaped like a skeleton. Izuku twisted only to shout in pain as he felt his right shoulder pop and dislocate. With terrifying synchronization from the animatronics, he was lifted up, the three of them dragging him through the air to hang over the empty animatronic. With a strange sense of care, he was lowered, his feet hitting it first. However, as soon as his legs were held tight against the casing, it closed and he screamed in pain. He glanced down to see blood pooling from the joints and gaps of the metal, mixed with fibers and ripped up flesh that were once his legs. He screamed and twisted, dislocating his other shoulder with a jerk as the pain overwhelmed him. And then, even as Freddy was about to lower him, his vision went black. The pain faded away, and a glowing white 6 a.m. appeared in his vision with a comforting chime of bells echoing through the darkness. As the 6 a.m. faded away, a counter appeared.
1 of 7 nights complete.
Well, that was an evil ending. Also, Izuku taking the time to give the heroes at least a chance was really nice.
Or maybe just an opportunity to teach them.
But I will not let you wait any longer. Maybe I'll record a second chapter, who knows, but for now I'll edit this and post it next week. And with that, I hope you had an enjoyable session. Grab yourself another drink. I know all over the world are heat waves coming around. Make sure you're staying safe from storms. Be sure to grab yourself a little meal, get some relaxation, and enjoy the rest of your summer break. I'll see you next time around, my lovelies. Ta-ta!